My name is Noah, or Argo, depending on who you ask. And on this week's episode, we talk about how games can express their meaning and they express their story without using words. You see, something that's unique about games is that they're an interactive experience. The player is has an active role in everything that's going on screen. Because of this relationship between the player and the story, the art in this case, the creator has several ways of interacting with the player on that level, beyond just using words. And so in this episode, we go into depth on two of those ways that a game can convey its narrative. But there are about four or five. You have mechanics, which we talk about, level and world design, which we also talk about, the art style, which falls into the character design, the world design, the colors used, and a couple other minor things. So perhaps we'll come back to this topic in a second part. But for now, without further ado, here is 10-cent opinion. Today on the podcast, we've got the same nerds as usual, Colton.
Hello.
And Xander.
Hello.
Yeah, and our topic this week is on how games can convey their ideas or meaning without any words, which is something that's fairly unique to gaming, is it's able to create an experience that is focused on a certain idea, instead of reading about something or watching something. You can experience it yourself. Now, why don't we start with some modern examples? Because in my opinion, we're in a bit of a renaissance of game development where people are starting to where everybody has access to game development tools, and it's pumping out a lot of interesting and unique indie games. And the people in the AAA scene are looking at the indie games and seeing that you can experiment a little bit. So, you guys, as usual, you've played a lot of games. Do you have any examples you would like to throw out there?
One thing I'd just like to point out that that was such an amazing improvised speech. No, I mean we've never done that before, and I thought it was really impressive.
But if it did, I would totally have notes or something. But I don't have any of those. Notes are for
giving you
chumps.
props because we don't have any other viewers to compliment you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for that one kid in the wheelchair who keeps commenting how much we suck. I don't know what's up with him.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah, anyway.
This is such a funny image.
You guys have
Nerds.
any... Nerds, let me push on my glasses.
First thing that comes to mind for me is Journey, and how that game
really?
I know! It's the first thing that comes to mind.
Journey and Breath of the Wild. Do we talk about it a little bit?
Journey, Breath of the Wild.
Go on.
It's like we've done these first 3 minutes before. What?
Carry on.
Same point now. Mine is Journey.
Why is it Journey, Colton?
Because the game has no dialogue and yet conveys a very complex but simple and relatable message that we can all relate to.
We kind of talked about that last week, but how does it do it? That's what's important.
You're just stealing my lines.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I believe it does it in this sense that you're so closely tied to your character, and having such a simple goal. At the very beginning of the game, you're shown the light at the top of the mountain, and it's very clear that you're supposed to go there. And you begin making that journey And even though it only takes about 2 or 3 hours to get there, depending on how you play, um, having such a simple, straightforward goal means that you're so intent on completing that you become invested in how your character in their story arc and in getting up the mountain.
But not all games that have simple goals are that impactful to the player.
Right.
Like
Look at Mario.
Yeah, Mario.
You gotta save the princess, and you gotta kill the bad guy. Sorry, I cut out there.
Stomp the Goombas.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Journey does it in a different way because it presents that goal in a very different way. And also a lot of the music design and things like that feels much more dramatic in your goal in getting there. What's interesting about it is that I don't think I was actually invested in the character until you reach the last portion of the game where everything starts going wrong.
Do you
That
think you
you
need to
begin.
be Yeah, do you think you need to be invested in the character in order for the story to take effect, to be impactful?
Think that kind of depends, both on the message and on the type of game.
You want to give me an example? Don't leave me hanging, man.
In Journey, your character isn't necessarily a character on its own. You're meant to place yourself in that character, and so in essence, you're already invested in accomplishing your goal. In fact, but in other games, I think you can convey a message through.
Mechanics? I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
there's
thing
so
about
many things:
games. Yeah,
mechanics and
mechanics, world
music
design,
and
music, level design. So why don't we take one of those mediums and flesh it out a bit more? Let's do world design, for example.
All right.
Xander, Colton just talked. Do you have any examples?
Well, what I was thinking is maybe I was thinking of the game. One moment. It's a game where every detail in the world makes a lot of sense, and it's there for a reason. It's not just an empty world, right?
Right. That harkens back to our open world discussion where we were saying that everything should have some sort of purpose and reward the player for exploration, even if that purpose doesn't really matter.
Right. You know, the worst offender in game design is invisible walls.
Yeah, go on.
Well, it's just, there's something there. You know there should be something there. And then all of a sudden you're stopped from making progress. Because whatever was there, they weren't able to purposefully place a border there or add something in there that actually made sense.
So a game that I find to have incredible world design is, and I know I'm bringing up the same game again, but it's
Oh my
Dark Souls.
goodness.
Because
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna say Breath of the Wild.
no, I wasn't going to say Breath of the Wild, but Breath of the
Barbie in the
Wild,
Dream House.
a lot of Breath of the Wild's story about the world comes from finding ruins and things. And then in Dark Souls, everything is hidden away and it's dark and it's cryptic. And you end up making the story basically as you go along. There is an actual
Right.
story, but what you make of it is it's what you find. So one of the major ways it does that is through, in my opinion, there's three ways that Dark Souls conveys its narrative. There's actual dialogue, which is usually the least, where you get the least amount of information. There's item descriptions, and then there is the environment. And the environment has always been really interesting because they're always meticulously detailed. Like I've been playing Dark Souls 3 lately, and one of the first areas you go to is these walls of a castle, and you going along, and there are these hollowed people praying to trees. There are dead dragons and people impaled and signs of like a battle. And as you're walking through this area, you start to think, why? What happened here? What? Why are these people praying? Why are these dragons dead? Did the dragons attack the town and these people had to defend it? So
Right.
that's
And I have something else to add that I just remembered
sure.
whenever you're finished with the Dark Side of the Souls thing. This will completely change the turn of conversation. So I wanted to make
Uh,
sure you were finished with your point.
well, let's see. Another example of the world design telling a story or implying an idea is later on in the game, you're on this cliffside, and the side of the cliff has these massive arrows, these steel arrows, all along the path, and you don't know why they are. And you're walking along, and there's all these enemies, and then suddenly you hear this, and then this explosion noise as this massive arrow flies into the side of the mountain, and I just thought that was really cool because for the observant player, you could realize that, oh, these are probably arrows. I bet there's some sort of trap or something that I need to watch out for.
Right.
And then you actually meet the guy who was shooting the arrows, and that even leads more into the you trying to create the own plot. Your own
That's an
plot.
interesting idea. Is that a game with with an ambiguous story or even an incredibly complex one, and of the player building their own stories within that universe and not actually fully understanding what the story is.
Yeah.
It's an
Uh,
interesting idea.
like Minecraft does it to some extent. And I've always loved Minecraft for that because the stories that I created with the players who I played with for hours on end, my sisters that is, we would create our actions would be the story, and they would have weight to them. So like we would build this great city, and then somebody got mad and they destroyed it, and then we created a memorial for it. That type of stuff
Uh,
where the
well,
story is there. Oh, Xander, are you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say the Roblox storyline is better.
All right.
Nice, nice, nice.
Full contribution.
Solid point right there. But that type of story, it's not exactly like Dark Souls because it's more freeformed. But where it's left ambiguous and you end up creating it, those are always some of the most interesting experiences that I've had with gaming. And I've got one from Dark Souls, but I think Xander, it's your turn to talk.
Okay. Well, I was just reminded of this DS game series that you guys probably have not played or heard about, but it's called the Zero Escape series.
Yep, never
And
heard of it.
it begins with this game called 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. And basically, it's the entire game is pretty much a visual novel, which goes completely against the whole idea of telling a story without words because the majority of the game is words and text that you read. However, there is a lot of the story that is also told through the puzzles in the game.
Mm.
Go on.
Basically, the game has a bunch of puzzles. You are in this kind of ship like thing, right? And
What? What does that mean?
okay, so basically you're in a ship, but it's
Oh,
not
a
really a
ship
yeah
with a
ship.
P.
Yes.
Thought you said you were in a ship.
No, 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 no.
All
That,
right,
that's a
you're in a ship. Okay, what happens in the ship,
that's
Xander?
a that's definitely the sequel. But anyways, so basically you have these rooms that you have to escape out of, and inside of all of these rooms there are everything matters, but not everything helps you escape the room. If you catch my drift.
Mm.
And so lots of elements of the story that are kind of lost throughout all of the narrative in the game can be picked up through each of the individual puzzle rooms, which I think is really cool because it helps tell a more complete story than the narrative ever could.
Yeah. I've got to stop doing that. Breaking silence by saying yeah. It doesn't add anything.
I say, yeah, I do the exact same thing. I say right.
Right? Yeah.
But, anyways, I just thought that that was a really interesting way of creating, telling a story without using words is in puzzles and in the environment of the game.
Here's one way to look at it. The game is this an ambiguous game. A good ambiguous game should provide the player with the tools for him or her to find their own story, which usually those tools will lend towards the central idea. So in the case of Dark Souls, they wanted to convey this the idea of if you just stop moving forward, then you're as good as dead. And they did that through the mechanics and the toughness of the game. But the actual story itself is entirely told through the player's actions. The player chooses what class they want to be. The player chooses whether they're going to put down the controller in frustration or keep moving forward. The player chooses how they interact with the world and they perceive the environment of the story.
Well, I think giving up is a choice you have in any game.
Well, of course, but in the case of Dark Souls, the idea is if you were to stop playing the game out of frustration, then you would turn hollow. Because you know the whole idea is you're cursed and you're slowly going insane and losing your humanity. And I think what the game was trying to portray was the people who just stop moving through the world, even though it's so hard sometimes, are basically as good as dead because they're just drowning in their own self pity.
Right. You know what I love and hate at the exact same time?
What?
Maybe hate a little bit more than love. Is games that have endings that are completely open for interpretation, or games with multiple endings that like completely change the definition of the entire game with each ending. And by that I mean like in the Zero Escape series, or even in Silent Hill. I think it was Silent Hill 2. They have an ending where you can be picked up by aliens,
Mm-hmm.
which aliens aren't really featured in the game. Or there's also an ending where there's a dog, and the dog did it. He did the whole thing. He's in control of it all.
See, here's the thing I have. If you can create multiple endings or an ending that's up for interpretation that actually adds to your game, then that's excellent. But for a while we had games coming out that a major selling point was, oh, there's multiple endings and your choices affect the world when in reality it
Right.
wasn't really true. It was just kind of
Well, you see that in games that come out recently too. Look at Life is Strange. You make a bunch of choices that change the entire, whole course of the game. But in the last couple episodes, it's almost like they ran out of possibilities, and so they had to strip it back down to the bare basics. And so basically, they created this whole idea of time paradoxes, and you're taking basically everything comes down to this one choice at the end of the game that you'll have no matter what course of action you take throughout the entire game. Which is kind of sad because the whole game is so different depending on how you play it and how the characters react to you. But the ending is not.
that's that's kind of the crux of the Telltale games is like the Telltale Walking Dead was pretty good because it
Right.
made you. All right, let me stop it there. The Telltale games are pretty good altogether, but because of their episodic nature, I think in the end they don't really allow for much choice, and instead they're just these episodes that you play through, but you don't really have much agency over.
Well, in The Walking Dead 2, it comes down to the same thing. In that you have these two choices at the end of the game, and are actually 3 choices in The Walking Dead season 2. And I think in season 3, I'm not sure if those choices actually matter because I haven't played it, but it the season 3 seems to take place further down in the future, so they could make it to where none of them matters. The choices that you make actually matter.
Yeah. See right there. If a game sets out to do something, they cannot stop halfway. Otherwise, they're just ruining their experience. I mean, think of let's taking Journey for example. If you got halfway through Journey and then it completely changes, it's like, oh yeah, you don't actually need to get to the top of the peak. Now you need to go level up to level 5 or something like that. It's
Well, that's what
Yeah, I would punch the game in the face if it did that.
that's what
exactly.
I really like about games that are absolutely no BS, and that they don't pretend to give to at least in the ending they don't pretend like they gave you a choice in the first place. Like look at BioShock. You know, in BioShock you think in the first BioShock you think, hey, I'm going to achieve this goal and I'm going to do this on my own free will. And it turns out the whole time you're being manipulated. There's nothing you could have done about it, and all the choices that you made in the game don't actually matter because they weren't your choices.
I was so frustrated with the ending of Mass Effect 3 and
I
how
think everybody was, my friend.
that's why everybody was so frustrated with it is because at the end, after all of these different choices, the only thing that changed was what was it, like 3 colors? It was
Yeah,
like the only thing
basically
that
the
really
way the
affected the ending.
universe exploded.
But what do those 3 colors mean, Colton?
Yeah, if it was
And then
red
which button you
and green
pressed.
and blue.
See, a game that actually had a choice like that at the end where it actually mattered was Prey. The choice was, I think it was kill everybody on the station or kill all humans or something like that.
Or you could actually do a side quest and attempt to escape from the station as well before the actual main game ended.
Really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
you could completely skip the main campaign. At least I think so. I haven't actually finished Prey yet.
You own it?
Yeah,
Ah.
I got it on sale.
It's also a game that I want to try out, but I don't have the money to do so. Anyway,
That's
I feel you, man. I feel you.
that lie.
no, it's not. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, I haven't bought a Steam game in like forever. Yeah, 'cause I don't
Well,
have
I
any
got
money.
excited. I don't have money, but I still bought a Steam game.
Sure, bud. Sure. um, Before we move on, though, I want to talk about how the Life is Strange plot endlessly frustrates me.
Go on.
It's so hits you on the head with its plot and its ideas so directly that I'm just sick of whatever they're trying to say by the end of it, right?
I can understand that. The sort of dream time sequence in the game runs way too long, and the whole thing is just so confusing. It did not need to have that much content.
Mm-hmm.
Something that was interesting about Life is Strange is even though it's giving you all this information, I think at least once in each episode you have the choice to just sit down and let the character and yourself just take it all in, and then you can sit there for as long as you want until you actually get up and enter the world again. Kind of like in
You,
real life, whenever you just sit down on your couch with some tea to take everything in before you continue with life.
you don't really need to do that in the first couple episodes because it's just like, oh, I have the power to rewind time. Nothing, no biggie. You know, you think it's just kind of like a normal high school drama with the ability to turn back time, which is a power that we all wish we had. But and then the game completely changes. It says, "Hey, you can't do nature like that. There are consequences, my friend."
So let's take it back to the original topic. We were talking about modern games that convey their narrative without words or other ways that they convey their narrative. Colton, your example was Journey, right? Can you think of anything else off the top of your head?
Not right off the top of my head, no. But I'm sure if I sat down and thought about it, I could find another one.
A
Actually, I have a
game,
question.
a game
Oh, let's go.
that. What do you want to say?
Ask if we could talk about how a game can accomplish these things without actually using world design as its sole purpose. So we talked about Dark Souls and things like that. But what about mechanics or music or whatever?
Oh, so you want to look at the other mediums? Well, mechanics and metaphors. That idea, I believe, is the most powerful thing in any designer's tool belt, because if they can work what if the designer can work what he's trying to express into the very game's foundation, the things that every player is interacting with, and then what defines their game, then you are able to convey their message in such a deeper way that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. And a list of games that do that would be like Loneliness, the Flash game that I was telling you about. Uh,
Could you give me a brief description of that game? Because I've not heard of it.
Yeah, I'll just explain it all to you. Basically, Loneliness is this little 3-minute Flash game where you are a black square.
Oh wait, I've played this game. Continue.
You
So
have?
readers know. I mean, listeners know. Yeah, I have. I played it for a design class that I was in.
Okay.
We were talking about minimalism. Continue.
Pop quiz. It's actually done by Noah in the future, teaching a design class using that game.
It's actually it was created by this teacher who was in Korea, and his student most Korean kids are depressed, I guess, and they feel isolated. So he wanted to create this game to express how that feels to other people. And basically, what happens in the game is you go through and you keep going forward, and there's this group of other black dots. Whenever you go up to a group, they scatter away and leave you isolated, and no group will ever actually do anything else but leave. So right there, fundamentally, the game is rejecting you in an effort to convey this emotion of true isolation.
Isolation.
Thank you. Without any world design, it's just strictly mechanics.
Another thing that comes to mind with mechanics would be, this is less philosophical, but making the player feel weak or subsequently strong through modifying the mechanics of what they're used to. So, like in the original Mega Man X, whenever you've been making your way through the first level and you've been fighting all these bad guys and you're killing all of them and it feels awesome, and then you get to that part and you fight this boss, and no matter how you do it, he will always kill you. The purpose of that is you're supposed to feel weak, to feel a sense of progression from that until you eventually kill him at the end of the game. And then for strength, at the end of Kingdom Hearts knowledge is coming back. What was it? 364-2 days?
Isn't that the one where you play as the black hooded dudes?
Don't
quote me. I never played them, but
yeah, that's the one where you're playing as Organization 13.
Yeah, those guys.
And it reminds me of another game too. Continue.
Comes at the end of that because it's a rather big deal. But your character is filled with rage after having lost something important, and go after the people or person who did this against you. Look at me avoiding all the spoilers. The game gives you an extra keyblade. So the whole time you've been doing a single-handed weapon, and it's very technical. And in the last part, you have two, and instantly you're twice as fast, you're twice as strong, and everything feels so fluid, full, that you're getting a sense of sort of vengeance about the loss of said thing. I thought that was really cool whenever I was younger.
You know, a game that purposely makes the player weak. All good stealth games actually do this, but I wanted to point out Metal Gear specifically because Metal Gear punishes you for killing people. If you want the best score and the best resources and stuff, then you have to use, tranquilizer weapons and things,
Or just
and
not get caught at
or
all.
just not get caught. But the thing is, the world and the enemies are so much stronger than you that if you don't try and outsmart them, if you don't think through how to proceed, the game will punish you. So, in that sense, the game is purposely putting you at a disadvantage in order for you to understand that the world doesn't really care. And because it's actually, let me restate that. It's putting you at a disadvantage and it wants you to complete the mission without killing anybody. So because you're trying to complete the mission without killing anybody and you're already at a disadvantage, it's trying to show how hard it really is to act in these scenarios non-violently. Another game that's similar to that.
I swear, if you bring up Batman.
No, I was going to bring up Barbie Dreamhouse, but I can talk about Batman if you want.
Yeah, see, we just completed the circle. We talked about Breath of the Wild, and then we talked about Metal Gear, and now we talked about Barbie Dreamhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another obscure DS game that I've played.
Go for it.
That you guys probably haven't heard about. It's called Custom Robo Arena.
Nope.
And
Haven't heard of that one either.
basically,
Orbit, go ahead.
Towards the end of the game, so you spend the whole game basically building up all of your powers, and you feel really good about yourself by the end of the game. Because by the end of the game, you're winning like every battle. And then you go to this final battle where you discover that there's been some illegal schnaz going on, and you fight this robot, and you get your ass kicked, and it feels terrible. And the the everybody's like, "What? He got defeated? That's not possible. He's the best character there is." And but basically, that's another example of the game making you feel bad. But then, after 5-minute dialogue, which the game has loads of dialogue, notice a pattern here. But after that space and time, you come back stronger than ever, and it feels really neat to to fight him that one last time and to actually win, especially compared to how badly you got your butt kicked beforehand.
That's always a good feeling when you lose and come back. And a game that does that oddly well is Dungeons and Dragons, because most DMs will put stuff that players can never even hope to kill at their current level, unless they had some sort of shenanigans.
Like
And
that darn Kraken.
Yeah, you're working on something like that for your campaign, right now?
Kind of, but yeah, in a what sense? But a lot of times you'll have like a dragon's in a lair, and there's been clear warnings that the dragon's in there, and then your players are like, all right, let's go find the dragon, and then the dragon almost kills them, and they're like, shit, and then they come back 3 sessions later and they just destroy the dragon.
Well, we did actually have a party of a bunch of level 7 adventurers, and we actually figured out how to kill an ancient dragon. Which you weren't there for that one, Noah, but basically, he was trapped. This actually made us feel really good, too. He was trapped inside, he was put there to ward us away from this big treasure, right? And so, he was inside a mountain. So one of the mages on our team cast enlarge on the dragon, and he got so big he got stuck inside the mountain, and so we poked at him until he died, pretty much.
Yeah, what's funny is that I'm over here going like, yeah, ancient dragons, those sound cool.
Well, that Xander, that harkens back to what I was saying earlier, where the game gives you the tools for you to then go and create your own story.
Right. There are some restrictions that the the DM for our Dungeons and Dragons games gets really frustrated with the party sometimes because we're able to do. He always has this narrative that he wants us to follow, and the party's always able to get out of it.
Just dodge all the responsibility of the story.
Because he has to obey the core rules of Dungeons and Dragons.
But okay, we're off topic, but that's not the point of Dungeons and Dragons whatsoever. The players are the heroes in the world. Your
Right.
job as the dungeon master is to follow their story, and if the players want to go off because they heard about some ancient ruins, then absolutely, you let them go off and find those ancient ruins, and that's their session. If they don't do what you want to do, that's okay. It's their
Right.
story.
And he does let the players do that. It's just usually he strongly suggests against it, or he'll make it more difficult to do it. But that's what actually makes it so fun, is that the more difficult path, the path of resistance, we're so constantly able to one up every single time. Maybe not every single time,
Um, thing to me is hearing about these stories. Like, yeah, he's got to improvise the story about these ruins now.
Well, that's even how I write my stories. Is I say, okay, in this city there are all these things and these players, and this is what their agendas are. I don't write, okay, the players are going to go here, and then this is going to happen, and this is happen. Because
right?
if I
Neither
do it,
does RPM either. Just to clarify,
what'd you say?
I said neither does the DM that I work with either.
Well, anyway, by
Just to
writing in that way, you're able to flow with the punches, and you know what's supposed to be how people would act. And so instead of being bound to a predetermined script, you allow the players to do what they want, and it becomes more their story, and it's molded by them instead of molded by what you want. I think it's time to take it back to the original topic, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun of discussion, though, is to going off on those rants. Because usually, here's the thing that I've always talked about with in school and things like that. The times that we go off the book, those are the subjects that we actually care about, and those are the discussion ideas and ideas conveyed that we actually something from because we're passionate about it. People are like, "Oh, that discussion was horrible. We didn't stick to the point at all," and it's like that's not what discussion is. I want people to talk about what they're passionate about, not what.
Well, to be fair, we won't have anybody complaining about us because we don't have anybody watching us or listening to us.
Come on, man! Like the future three of us are gonna go like, "Oh, they got off topic again."
Damn, why are they changing the subject all the time?
Mm-hmm.
We'll even watch this video like a week after we post it. We'll be like, man, we suck.
Why does nobody watch us?
Say they have that done in 15 minutes. Or it's gonna be super quiet after that depressing statement.
Why? That nobody watches us?
No, that I was like, I have the thought that I suck every 15 minutes.
You know what we could do? We could pay for a YouTube ad and get and have just a bunch of random people encounter our podcast. Hey, I'm Noah. And
No, we get like celebrities.
Hey, and Colton.
Like JPEG pictures of celebrities.
I thought you just. I thought you were gonna say. Never mind.
I think I like the ad idea being like, hey, I heard that you like ADHD podcasts where we don't stick to the topic. All right, let's play.
Let's play. I do have one last game I want to bring up before we close here, but
Better not be the Barbie Dreamhouse sequel.
no, that game sucks.
Barbie in the Dream Guest House.
But it does. Back to the D&D thing, it kind of does annoy me when the hardest lesson that I had to learn when I was learning to DM was that the story is not mine and that I cannot bound my players by what I want. It's not about me. It's about how can I create an interesting story for them. And as soon as I learned that, my stories got much, much better. And I think that's kind of the way you have to look at game design. It's not what. I mean, of course, you want to be working on something that you're passionate about, but you also have to think about how can I make this game affect somebody else, not just how it relates to me. You have to take both of those into opinion.
I feel like the same goes with music too. You're trying to convey a story, but it's more about almost. First off, with music, if you're going to be a professional musician, it's always about the listener. But you're trying to convey a message or a story or some kind of sound, and uh, you know, in every person's mind, it takes a different direction.
Yeah, because everyone's different and everyone's going to have a different interpretation of it. But like we said, art is simply means giving something back, and in games and in music, it's the way the medium is able to give that back. What tools does it use to give something back to the player that they can take away?
I was just thinking, if we do put one of our videos up for an ad, some poor soul is gonna have to sit there and listen through the whole thing and make sure that there's no like bad words or hate speech or anything.
Mm.
But there will be, right? Yeah.
There will be what?
Just like profanity.
There will always be bad words.
You just bleep it out.
So before we close, the last game I wanted to talk about is it's an arcade game. I wanted to talk about Missile Command. What are you laughing at?
I don't know. It's just it's funny to me.
But the thing about Missile Command is that what you got like 3 bases where you're firing off missiles, and then you have 5 cities, and your goal is to protect the cities from incoming missiles. But this game doesn't provide any narrative or any words, and it asks you to value the lives of the citizens and the lives of the soldiers in the base, and you are constantly trying to make the moral choice, even if you're not registering it, between do we save the people, do we save the missiles, or do I let all these cities die except for one and protect that one, and so on and so forth.
Hashtag missile lives matter.
And this is kind of interesting because the creator of the game, after he created it, he would have dreams about his hometown being destroyed by missiles over and over again. Because to him, the way he created it, he didn't want to create a game. He wanted to create something that represents the horrors of nuclear warfare, right? When you're playing the game, you're not firing missiles at other people. Everything is in self-defense. You are trying to survive the last couple seconds before everyone is dead, right? And that's how he saw it. So there you go. You're trying to make a game. You're trying to look at how to create a narrative without words. Look at Missile Command. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
I'm disappointed we didn't talk about Barbie Dreamhouse more.
All right, fine. Talk about Barbie Dreamhouse.
We're gonna have a whole episode on Barbie Dreamhouse.
Yeah, we will. One day.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like we all sit down and we play it for like 4 hours. we come together and talk about it. Oh my gosh, did you like that one mini game with Jessica and her shoes? That was my favorite game.
Dress up with Barbie, man. It's amazing.
I think we're gonna be very surprised at how accurate Colton's description is when we actually play the game. I mean, if.
So, like, here I am, like, I've got, like, hidden posters in my room of, like, Barbie and Dreamhouse, and...
All right, let's wrap up. So, thanks for watching our third episode of 10-Cent Opinions. Yeah, we will see you guys later. See ya.
We will also continue
See
to
ya.
evolve.
I love you too.
Come on.